Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for
obviously, as one of our exhibitors, teaching people about blue light and the benefits essentially of circadian rhythm. So anybody who's a part of IHP knows how much we focus on the autonomic nervous system and really saying that cortisol is not a good thing or a bad thing. It's when you produce it during the day and how much, and also the other stress hormones that go along with it. So people now have gotten a chance to kind of get to know you a little bit better, but I would love to hear your personal story as a founder, how you got into this, what your background was, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for inviting me. I know this was not planned, so I feel honored to be able to share this with everybody. As a kid, I was the perfect example of a problem child. Headaches, agitation, inability to focus in the classroom. And my school was so quick to label me with ADHD and to force me back into an educational system where artificially lit classrooms felt like a prison cell to me. And as an empath from an early age, I was able to hear and sense things that other kids could not hear and sense. And unfortunately, that meant that I was able to hear the noise and the torturing frequency coming from artificial lights. And all I wanted is to break free and to be outside in the sun and to connect to nature's rhythmic heartbeat, which really inspired me to create poetry and art. But unfortunately, I was forced back into the classroom, and troublemaking became my only escape from that prison. And believe it or not, Dr. Cabral, I was asked to leave 7 different schools.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, a few years in, I somehow landed myself into engineering school. However, by that time, I was completely disconnected from my inner light. And I started living like a night owl, wired and up all night, drained and completely useless during the day. And I felt like I was almost chewed up and spat out by life, never up for much, constantly unmotivated in both my professional and my social life. And I was constantly dragging myself through the day as if I was wearing a backpack full of rocks. And at some point, few years down the road, as I was working as an engineer, I was completely disconnected from myself. And I remember that one day where I actually received the news that I was fired from my job. I came back home and I woke up the second day completely paralyzed with overwhelming sadness. I could not get myself to get up from bed or even find a compelling reason to do so. And unfortunately, at that time in my life, I was literally suicidal. I did not want to live. So a few days in, I stumbled upon a quote from Albert Einstein, which he played a major role in my life and in my understanding about quantum biophysics and light. But the quote said, "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." And that literally struck me like a lightning bolt. And I knew within my soul that it's time to change. So I packed all my bags and I decided to travel and learn from different health experts. And I was feeling so hopeful about a new reality where I could be in control of my health and well-being. Now, a few months in, I was learning from different health gurus. And I started to feel very overwhelmed because different people were telling me different things. Eat this food, no that food. And it was a lot of different diets that I'm trying, a lot of different supplements. And at that stage in my life, being so foggy and confused, it was very complicated to me, to be honest. And no matter how many diets I tried, no matter how many supplements I took, I did not experience any long-lasting benefits. And I felt like there was a problem in me. Now, I remember that one evening very well, I was completely lost in the vast sea of the internet. And I stumbled upon a YouTube video titled "Artificial Light is Killing Us" by Dr. Jack Kruse. He's a neurosurgeon from the States. And my brain was so foggy that I could not understand anything from what he said. But the one line that stood out and that I was able to remember the second day, he literally said, we can't get healthy in the same light environment that made us sick. And by light environment, he meant all the man-made artificial light that we are exposed to in our indoor lifestyle, from bulbs, screens, and devices. And having tried so many different modalities, I decided to take his word to heart. And I went on and I booked an experience with indigenous people up northern Canada, where I was volunteering on their farm for 6 weeks. And on this farm, I was sleeping in my tent, being exposed only to natural sunlight during the day and fire and candlelight during the evening. Now, within a matter of 3 days, something phenomenal happened. I literally felt a transformation that I have not felt in 25 years. And it literally brought me back to that kid that was connected to the rhythm of nature and that was connected to that inner light that allowed me to express myself creatively. And I have forgotten about this kid for 25 years. Somehow, I have buried it deep down so I can fit in society. And being a night owl, to my surprise, I slept shortly after the sunset to then wake up before the sunrise with no alarm clock, feeling super rested, energized, and my motivation was scaling to new heights. And that's like within 3 days. Being an ADHD kid, to my surprise, my focus was razor sharp. And I was able to finish a book and read it in 1 week. So that was really powerful and transformational. And being the curious soul that I am, I really wanted to understand what was that magic behind this transformation. After 6 weeks, I came back to the city. And within a matter of few weeks, I fell back into my old terrible routine of staying up late, waking up feeling depressed and chronically fatigued. So I decided one more time to go to another farm, and I experienced the same transformation. So that was, wow, like what's happening? So I remember shortly after, I participated in a Vipassana retreat center, which is a meditation where you sit in silence for 10 days. And during those 10 days, I had one question written upon my heart. Why is it that I'm experiencing this transformation on the farm? What's the difference? And I kept getting that same answer, light. And to me, being trained as an engineer, it did not make any sense because we have never been taught about the profound impact that light plays on our health. As engineers, we think of light as something for vision. And as practitioners, I also learned that many practitioners have never been taught about the profound forces of physics like light and magnetism and the way they actually instruct our biology on what to do. So that was a big aha moment in my life, which led me again to Albert Einstein. And this time, the fantastic equation E equal mc squared. Raise your hand if you know who Albert Einstein is. Okay, and also raise your hand if you know about the law of relativity, E equal mc squared. Okay, so again, so many people are familiar with E equal mc squared, and I was too, but I have never contemplated it and internalized it in the way I did back then. And I'd like to break it down if that's okay.
Okay.
So E is light, M is mass, which means our bodies and everything around us in this moment. And C is velocity. And what this equation literally means, though it may seem like it's coming out of a science fiction movie, it literally means that light and matter are exactly the same thing. And when light slows down, it turns into matter. Now, here's the interesting thing that I learned afterwards. We have a substance in our eye called the vitreous EDI, which is composed of water, collagen, and acid. And its sole purpose is to slow light down. And this light energy is being used to manufacture all of the brain chemicals and neurotransmitters that control the way we think the way we feel, and the way we act. So if we think about it, light creates reality. And light is one of the most profound forces that not only shapes and molds our health and well-being, but it is the nucleus of life itself. And that was a big aha moment in my life and a big breakthrough that led me to start looking at the field of health and well-being from a whole new lens and from a whole new perspective.
I've spoken with a lot of founders, a lot of companies. That was easily one of the best founder stories that I've ever heard. It's amazing. Amazing. And because I always want to know, I mean, this is a crowded field, right? Blue light blocking glasses. Obviously, yours are different. They have different components to them, which allows you to use one glasses and be able to wear them daylight, evening, I just call it before bed, and be able to work with cortisol, which we'll talk about that in a moment. But, I mean, was it your passion because of your story and what you went through, saying, yeah, I know it's a crowded field, but I'm going to do it anyways, and I'm going to do it because I'm in this for the right reason? Like, what was your thought process behind that?
Yeah, beautiful question. So when I was alternating between the farm and the city, I would experience this profound transformation on the farm, and then I would lose that magic in the city. And I started learning about light and the importance of maximizing healthy light during the day and minimizing the junk artificial light. Now, maximizing healthy light was easy because I could simply go outside and expose myself to sunlight at the right time in the right way. But being in the city, it was so difficult to avoid the artificial light. It's everywhere, in the kitchen, in the bedroom, down the mall, and on our phones, on our screens. So that led me to that rabbit hole of researching about a solution. Yes. And I learned about blue light blocking glasses. Now, I experimented with a dozen, and I did not feel the benefits I was looking for. And being an engineer, I understood the physics of light very well. And I had my spectral color mirror, which is a tool that allows you to measure the light in any given environment, which means that you could measure the light that is coming from a screen. You could also measure what the glasses are actually filtering and what they're not filtering. And I was very surprised because the first blue light blocking glasses I stumbled upon were from my optometrist. Mm-hmm. And I remember paying around $250 to get that blue light coating. And after a while, I did not experience any benefits. And being the curious mind that I am, I took my spectral color mirror and I was measuring what type of frequency actually these lights are blocking. And what I learned was extremely shocking because I saw the screens start their emission at 430 nanometer in blue light, and they peak at 455 nanometer. And clear blue light blocking glasses, they were blocking blue-purple light up to 420 nanometer. So they were doing nothing to the actual harmful sources of light that we're exposed to on a daily basis. So then I learned about yellow blue light blocking glasses. And I experimented with those. And I started feeling tired and fatigued during the day. And I was hearing all the time, blue light is bad, you need to block it, it's not good for your health. And that swung me to a place in my life where I actually thought I need to eliminate blue light, which I actually learned the hard way, that's actually not true. And what I learned is that just like anything in nature, blue light is not good nor bad. Mm-hmm. In nature, there's no good and bad. There's relativity, back to Albert Einstein. And the effect of blue light on us will depend on the time of the day we're exposing ourselves to it, which goes back to our ancestors. They were exposed to a lot of blue light during the day, but no blue light at night. The second factor is whether that blue light is balanced and proportionate with the other frequencies of colors. And what this means, if we look at the spectral curve of sunlight, it's composed of all the colors of the rainbow, as well as UV and infrared, which are invisible frequencies. But if we look at that rainbow, the one thing that we can see is symmetry and balance. And there is polar opposites that are interchanging in balance. And in this case, anytime we're exposing ourselves to blue, there's always the polar opposite, which is the orange, yellow, and red. And the problem with artificial lighting is that it has a very narrow spike in blue and not even the full spectrum blue light. And that blue is not balanced and proportionate with the yellow, orange, and red light. And what this means is that blue light in nature is degenerative, whereas red, orange, and red light are regenerative. And when we are in sunlight, the degenerative, regenerative seesaw interchange and balance, and we get perfectly nourishing light. Whereas when we are indoors, we are dealing with a degenerative frequency that we have not evolved around. And that led me to start thinking deeper about how can we find a solution during the day that harmonizes that blue so that it's more balanced and symmetrical without blocking too much of it, while having a system that allows us to block the wrong frequencies at the right time as the days go through. For example, after the sunset, 1 hour before bedtime.
Yes. So I'd love to, want to start to get into audience questions. But before we do, share with us the methodology. You just started to get into a little bit of when to move from the, let's just call it yellow, orange, red lenses, time of the day to do that, how much it filters, what balance it creates, and the why behind it.
Absolutely. So the daytime lenses are designed to be worn indoors when you are exposed to a lot of artificial light. And that's in environments like this, in an airport, in your office, when you're sitting on your computer. And what these do, they are specifically engineered to decrease that sharpness of this nasty spike at 455 nanometer. And it spreads it out across the spectrum so that it's more balanced with the green, yellow, orange, and red light. Now, as the day progresses, the light in nature starts changing. And the one thing about light is information, which instructs our nervous system and our circadian system about the time of the day, as well as the time of the season. I'm not gonna go in the season so much, but when the sun sets, it tells our body that the day is ending so that we can start winding down and preparing for restful night's sleep. But unfortunately, when we come back home and we're exposed to this alien sunlight, we trick the brain again into thinking it's daytime, which spikes our cortisol, and that extends into messing up with our blood glucose level. It may create craving for carbs and sugar. It messes up with leptin and ghrelin. So there's no one aspect in our endocrine system that is not touched by light. And at that point, in order to be able to eliminate that wrong frequency, we snap on the evening lenses, which you can see on our booth. And those are designed to filter out 100% of the blue and the highest frequency green. And they're engineered to mimic the color temperature of a bonfire. How many of you here have been around a bonfire? Okay. And the one thing we feel around the bonfire is an instant wind down and relaxation. And that's where our ancestors have spent most of their time after the sunset. Now, 1 hour before bed, we snap on the nighttime lenses, which filter out 100% of the blue, 100% of the green, and they decrease the brightness by 20 times, which is a very important aspect when we are talking about circadian biology, because it's not only about the color, it's also about the brightness of light. And in order for the brain to understand that it's truly nighttime, we need to stop any frequency that is blue, that is green, and we need to decrease that brightness.
That's amazing. And it's, I mean, just what we teach inside of HPH as well is put on those red, we'll call red blue blocking glasses, put it on theta waves,
yes,
or at least something to bring down your beta or gamma waves from the brain during the day, and then even do something to stimulate the HRV. And by doing that, I mean, you can see the overnight results. That's the nice thing, is that all of these things can be measured. And so when you're talking about the specific science behind it, you can measure all of these things. And that's what I love, is that, you know, I like to trust, I like to try a lot of different things, but at the same time, before I ever recommend it to any of my clients or any of you, just like you would do for your clients and family, you want to verify that it works first. And that's the nice thing about a company like yours, is that it comes from an engineering background. There's a reason behind it, and it works. It's not just like, we're creating this company because people like this, it's trendy, we can put it on Amazon, and we can try to like outbid everybody. No, that's not, like, there's a real story behind this, which is great.
Yes.
The last thing that I kept thinking, like over and over, when you visited these farms and you were getting the results, is that this is what the original naturopaths did in the 1700s, 1800s, and early 1900s. They literally took people out into nature, forest bathing. They took them to hot springs or warm springs or even cold-based plunging. They lived outdoors, and they basically reharmonized their body.
Yes.
And by reharmonize, I actually mean they changed the frequency at which their body was actually vibrating or moving at. And a big part of that is, just like you said, your eyes take in the environment, and so does your skin to a degree. And what happens is neurotransmitters change, mood changes, leptin, ghrelin changes. So if you're dealing with depression or anxiety, overwhelm, or weight loss-based issues, or inflammation, it's not ever one thing that's the fix. It's getting the body back to neutral, that it's able to stay balanced. And I think that this is one big part of that equation.
Yes,
so appreciate everything you're doing.
The one word that stands out is the word balance, because I believe every ailment we run into, whether it's mental, physical, or emotional, it's when we step out of balance. And the one thing about nature is composed of polar opposite or opposite conditions, call them yin and yang. And those two opposite conditions are constantly interchanging in balance. And that's what allowed the beauty or the frequency of nature to help us to come back to equilibrium.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with light. And unfortunately, when we are manufacturing lights, no one is thinking from a screen of balance. We're thinking more of energy efficiency and all kind of stuff, but we're not looking at how it impacts our biology.
100%. And I'm glad you mentioned earlier too, blue light is not a bad thing. You want blue light for depression and for low mood and seasonal affective disorder. It's when you want it. It's when the sun would be rising in those early morning hours and throughout that part of the day. So there's nothing wrong with going outside and getting sunshine. It's just what we're dealing with right now, which is the artificial light. Let's take some questions if that works for you.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So the first one is from Chelsea, tied with Angelique. I use a red light setting on my iPhone at night and in the morning. Is that actually blocking all the blue light, or should I be wearing glasses also?
No,
I've got my opinion on this, but I want you, the expert, to take it.
Yeah, that's a great question. It is actually blocking all the blue if you're setting your settings on the iPhone in the right way. But what you need to know is that this nasty frequency of blue light is not only emitted by screens and laptops. And one mistake that most people do, they get the glasses, they wear them when they are in front of their computer, and then they go to the kitchen, they blast themselves with LED light that is emitting the same frequency, and they're not realizing that they're actually exposed to that same torturing frequency. So whether you're down the mall or down the street or in your house, you're always exposed to the LED bulbs, and those bulbs have the same frequency as the phone and the screen.
Yeah, I was going to say the same exact thing. It's that great to do it on your phone, and you should, especially at night. But the problem is, unless you turn all the lights off in your house, or you're using amber-based lights, you're still being exposed to the blue light. So you can do both, in my opinion.
Yeah, personally, I turn my house into a cave, but sometimes friends come over and they think I'm weird, so I need to wear the glasses. Also, if I'm going to visit them, and if I have not converted them into weirdness too, then I will need to take my glasses with me.
Sure, yeah, nothing wrong with that as well. I know there's a few people in the audience already wearing theirs. So. Let's see, Angelique said, how would these work if you wear prescription lenses?
Yeah, so luckily we work with a lab in BC that operates on solar and geothermal. They're our partners, and we do all kind of prescription. So
through your website, they can get their prescription?
Yes, and the one thing also about prescription is that 100% of prescription lenses block 100% of the UV. So when you're outside in sunlight, you're missing on UVA and UVB when you're wearing those lenses. What I always advise people is take them off so that you can take sunlight in your eyes. And luckily also, we came up with a technology for prescription that allows 60 to 70% more UV light for everyone who wear prescription. And in that case, we call it the 4-in-1, because you will have your base frame for outdoors so that you can get that sunlight. And when you're indoors, you have the daytime, evening, and nighttime for artificial lighting.
I didn't know that. I don't think most people know that prescription lenses block that UV light, which you do need. Again, not all light is bad, just like not all cortisol is bad. And so that's a really great tip. All right, Anonymous is up next. How often should we be wearing these glasses? Is this an all-day thing if we're indoors?
So with the daytime lenses, as long as you are exposed to artificial light, it's good to wear them. If you were in a setting where natural light is dominating artificial light, then you don't need them in that case. You will only need them when there's a lot more artificial lights than natural light. And for the nighttime one, what matters the most is consistency, right? Because light is information. And when the sun sets, it's telling your brain the day ended. So the time when you put the evening glasses matters. You need to put them right after the sunset, and you need to maintain that consistency and putting them at the same time every day so that you get that regularity, which is really what matters the most in circadian biology.
And you can vary that, like summertime, it's going to set 2-3 hours later than winter time, so you can base it on, in New England, like there's no sun in the sky from December through essentially April. So you could just say this is the time the sun would be setting. And
exactly, and now nature is turning on and off the light bulbs and not us. And the problem happens is when we override nature and decide to turn on the lights when it's dark outside. Yeah. Because another thing is that light also resets our seasonal rhythm. And as you said, the day is naturally shortening, telling the body that we're approaching winter, and lengthening, telling the body that we're approaching summer. And there's a lot of physiological changes that happen when we are in winter versus we are in summer. So many people deal with SAD. They can't handle cold temperature. Mm-hmm. Now, from my perspective, it's because their body is thinking there is 12 noon summertime all year long.
It's an interesting theory. I've never heard that before. I like that. And I would say, too, is this is just an easier way to try to mimic the seasons while enjoying modern conveniences. When the sun sets at 4:30 p.m. in the winter, like I said, in the Boston area or so, you can't shut off your lights. Yeah. Like you've got, especially families and all that, it's easy just to put on the orange lenses for those. So I like that. That's fantastic. This next one is from Catherine. It says, captivating conversation. Thank you. Have you measured your HRV and cortisol to see how the glasses have shifted your nervous system?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the first thing I actually learned about, because when I was really struggling, my cortisol at night was really spiking. And what I learned working with several clients and several practitioners is most people are actually having their cortisol spiking at night, and that depletes their cortisol reserve. And the problem with that is that they wake up in the morning with not enough cortisol in their system. And cortisol need actually to have that healthy rising tide first thing in the morning so that we are feeling alert, focused, and energized. So for me and for most people living in the modern world, we're almost living upside down, where our cortisol is spiking at night when melatonin should be spiking, and we have not enough cortisol in our body during first thing in the morning when we're supposed to have cortisol in our body.
I found exactly the same, and for me, it was when I was recovering from Addison's, I had to get outside to get sunlight or use a light box in order to get the sun. A lot of people use it for seasonal affective disorder. I was using it to actually bring my cortisol levels back up naturally, because when it's dark out, you don't actually get that, that light coming into your body. So that's a big part of it. I'd like you to also touch on just a little bit more around health and hormones and maybe even weight loss if you can before we get to that next question, just because so many of our IHP's clients are dealing with maybe it's menopause, maybe it's andropause for men, or just in this imbalance with insulin insensitivity. I have my theories around this with light at night and all of those things as well, but I'd like to get your take on that.
Yeah, I'm going to give a few examples. So I mentioned in the beginning that lights provide the energy to manufacture all these different neurotransmitters. For example, we have tryptophan and tyrosine in our eyes, and they're literally shaped like a benzene ring. And what this means is that they trap photons. And when UVA strike the eye first thing in the morning, it converts tyrosine into serotonin and tryptophan into serotonin and tyrosine into dopamine. And what we know about dopamine is that it's this magical neurotransmitter that allows us to think outside of the box and to go after what we really want in life. And being a depressed person before, I was lacking that serotonin and dopamine. And what I actually learned afterwards is there's a study that was published by Dr. Samer Hittar, a circadian biologist, showing that artificial light entering the eyes at night suppresses the release of dopamine the following morning, and it actually overstimulates a region in the brain called the habenula, I believe, and it's known as the disappointment center in the brain. And what this means is that every night we're exposing ourselves to artificial light at night, we're a lot more likely to wake up feeling unsatisfied and less motivated about our missions, about our goals. And I know that everybody here is mission-driven. Everybody is looking to create impact. So that's absolutely a very simple thing that we can start doing. Simply getting a lot more morning sunlight, paying attention to when UVA is rising in the environment, which I recommend using an app called the Circadian Lifestyle that takes your location and it tells you exactly when UVA is rising in your environment so that you can take 5 minutes of your day, be outside, and get that UVA in your eyes. Now, another very important thing is there's a German scientist called Fritz Hollwich back in the 1970s. He published phenomenal work to explain how light control every aspect of our endocrine system. And one of the studies that he published is he saw that sitting under artificial lights spike our cortisol and ACTH. Now, why is that a problem? Because at night, when cortisol goes up, it's not only going to overstimulate you, but since cortisol's role is to provide glucose for the muscles so that you can fight and flight and run from the tiger, but in this case, there's no tiger, what happens is that your blood glucose level will spike up and crashes down. And this will cause all kinds of cravings for sugar and carbs. And I've had so many conversations with clients, and what I discovered is that they would be sitting, watching Netflix, let's say, on their television, and out of a sudden they find this intense urge to go open the fridge and eat all kinds of stuff. And then they end up feeling guilty, and they talk to their nutritionist, and it's like this vicious cycle of guilt. But what I tell them is you're trying to swim upstream against your evolutionary biology. And light is actually controlling that hormonal system, and it's hard to control that with willpower alone. I mean, why would you do that? It takes a lot of energy.
Yeah, that's great. What was the name of that app once again, the Circadian Rhythm UV app?
It's called the Circadian Lifestyle.
The Circadian Lifestyle.
Yes.
Great. That's fantastic. This is from Anonymous. It says, my son's job is working on a computer for 8 to 10 hours a day. Is there any hope of balance? How can that be achieved?
Yeah, absolutely. So if your son is open, then what I would recommend is that if they're working on their computer during the day, that they wear the circadian harmonizing lenses. And just like most of society today is programmed to take those cigarette breaks, right? We could get into the consciousness of teaching people how to get sunlight breaks. And that would be every 2 hours or so, taking a 5 minute out of our day, going outside and basking that sunlight on in our eyes and on our skin. And that simply could bring your son towards balance.
I think this would help the next person as well. Is that why I get tired while watching a computer screen is because of the light?
Yeah, absolutely. And that blue light is inflammatory as well, which causes inflammation in the mitochondria. And the eyes are highly rich in mitochondria, which eventually start causing eye strain, headaches, and agitation. And it's one of the things I really suffered from as a kid.
It's amazing how it comes full circle. Yeah, for me, and I actually want to get to just one more question, but I will put on, like, for realistically how I do it, I try to always wear them at night. So like that's for me is a must, because for me that's also the most important time that I do it. But if I'm going to be staring at a computer screen during research and just reading papers, like on because I have a big monitor that I read them all on.
Yes.
I have them on my desk. They're always there. They never move from my desk. And then I just put them right on. Like, so for me, it's very simple. It's very straightforward. And I always like to work with natural light. So I have a lot of windows in my office. But I still wear them no matter what when staring at that screen. And then it just becomes habit. But what I've seen to be the most game-changing is to start to block out that blue light when you're not supposed to be getting the blue light. That for me has been even more effective than the daytime. So just giving you my anecdotal as well.
And I agree with that. If I had to choose between the most important time of the day to regulate light, it would be after the sunset, because that's completely alienated from our system to actually be exposed to a lot of bright light when it's dark outside. And that signal of darkness will make all the difference between restorative and regenerative sleep or not. And regardless of the fact of whether we're sleeping 8 hours or not, it's this signal that will make all the difference.
Great, we're gonna get to one more question, and I'm gonna do a part 2 on this question. Are sunglasses bad? And I just heard this theory last summer, so just a couple months ago. Wearing sunglasses can cause a greater sunburn because your eyes aren't able to see the sun and the, for lack of a better term, severity of the sun during the summertime, and so your body can't then produce the melanin or the pigment that you need in order to not get the burn.
Absolutely true. So we have photoreceptors in the eye called neuropsin, and they are UV receptors that are designed to let our skin know that there is UV in the environment. So anytime we're wearing sunglasses or prescription lenses that block 100% of the UV, the brain is not understanding that there is UV in the environment, and we're missing that signal from the brain to the skin to produce melanin, which is the pigment that allows us to tan. And therefore, we're a lot more likely to burn if we're sitting and basking that sunlight with sunglasses on. And here's where the industry of sunscreen kick in at the same time with sunglasses, because if you're burning yourself because you're missing that UV signal, now all of a sudden you need a lot of sunscreen to protect yourself from sunlight. But on another note, I think sunglasses are really bad. And the reason, there's so many reasons, one of which is that we are designed to take on that light via our eyes primarily. And one thing that I learned is that the blood that is pumped by the heart circulates through our eyes every 2 hours. The whole volume of our blood circulates every 2 hours via our eyes. And when light enters the eyes, it actually increases the food absorption into our blood as well as oxygen absorption. So anytime we're wearing sunglasses outside, we're missing on those benefits. And out of a sudden, if we start thinking of light as a nutrient, that just like the food that is entering our mouth is a nutrient, the light that is entering our eyes is also a nutrient.
I have to add one more anecdote to this as well, is that I've been reading recently that because I'm trying to figure out why some people, no matter really the dose that you give them for vitamin D and the cofactors, they just aren't able to get those vitamin D levels up. And it very well could be because they're not getting any sunlight touching the skin, even secondary sunlight through a window, which I've seen actually with vitiligo and a few other things that have been beneficial. So I wonder if that, for some people, they are more sensitive than others in order to create that synthesis of vitamin D to usable vitamin D, that they need at least some level of sunlight.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a massive difference between like taking a vitamin D pill and producing vitamin D via UV striking the skin, which breaks down the cholesterol, and it goes into a series of different biological effects that actually turn into the bioavailable vitamin D that our body absorbs. So I think that it's always best, if we can, to get that vitamin D via exposure to UVB. And UVB is not always present in our environment. So we really need to understand when UVB is appearing. And that's, again, when the circadian lifestyle app is very useful, because you will know that perhaps between 11 and 3, there's UVB, and that's when you actually need to go outside and expose your skin. And there's another app, I believe it's called D-Miner. And what the app does is it takes your location, it takes your skin type, and it helps you time your healthiest dose of sunlight so that you can make optimal vitamin D without burning. And also, when it comes to burning, there's a concept called building your solar callus, which our ancestors naturally did, because in the spring, they would be outside and they would gradually expose themselves to the rising UV until summer arrives. And one thing about sunlight is that the way sunlight rises, during sunrise, there's no UV whatsoever. And there's a lot of infrared light, which is the polar opposite of UV. And when you expose your skin to infrared light, it allows you and prepares your skin to absorb more UV in solar noon without burning. And also, interestingly, infrared light is what allows you to repair and rejuvenate any damage that might have happened due to overexposure to UV. So it's almost nature's natural sunscreen.
Fantastic talk, right? Great job, Roudy. Appreciate you. So if we have a slide for Viva Rays, I'm not sure if we do. We want to pop that up. Of course, Viva Rays is outside. You can try on the glasses. You can test them out for yourself. I've recommended them on the podcast, in my newsletter, and much more. Anything else you want to say about Viva Rays before we wrap up?
One thing I'd like to say is, like, in Viva Rays, we are currently working with the glasses, but our ultimate mission is to live in a world where we no longer need these glasses. So our vision is to live in a world where we're constantly surrounded by full spectrum, like artificial light that is able to track our location, the time of the season, and the time of the day, and mirror that exact frequency that we're supposed to get from sunlight when we are indoors, so that we're creating this, so that we're syncing to nature's rhythm. And similarly, when we are at night, to get the fire-like frequency, which is very, very different than most of the light bulbs that we're seeing right now labeled as circadian lighting. Because one thing I do think and I predict is, just in the same way narrow wavelength blue light and exposure to it chronically will cause a lot of problem, also if we transform our lighting environment into only narrow band red light and chronically expose ourselves to it, we may run into problem. Because if you look at fire, it's a full spectrum warm light. And we are aiming to be able to produce something that is more in alignment with the variability of light from day to night.
Agreed, 100%. That was fantastic. Thank you, Roudy. Appreciate you. Great job.